All right, guys, we're going to get going now. A lot of you have sat in on my presentations. Just to give you my brief introduction, I'm Mark Ryan. I'm the sales and marketing director at America's Choice Title Company. I'm also an agent, so I've been in your shoes. I know the drill. And I like to present what I call common sense training. And this is a training I've been doing probably for a month and a half now. So showing a buyers you're worth your compensation. We're in a whole new world now. And when I was an agent, I only had one buyer broker agreement that I ever had signed. And that's a story I may get into later. But when I was in the business, it was much easier because I would always start the conversation with my buyer. Hey, you don't have to pay me anything. Those days they still may not need to pay you anything, but there's a different process now. And that's what this training is all about. So I always like to give you guys a roadmap, what we're doing. Education, that's yours and your customers. Research, again, yours and your customers. You got to be more buttoned up now than ever before. Setting a strategy with your prospective buyers. Crafting the offer. To me, that's one of the most important things we do as an agent is crafting the offer. It's the purchase and sale agreement is the most important document in our business. And that's the one thing, if not done properly, can get you in trouble. Contingency items, there always seems to be those.
They already been.
Great. Managing the contract to close period, I always say that's when us as agents earn our service fee. And the new buzzword now with the NAR supposed agreement, and the reason I say supposed is that the Department of Justice now has put a crimp in that, saying, well, maybe people can come back later and maybe sue the real estate industry, but that's a whole different thing. But I never liked the term commission. NAR wants us to use now compensation, which I think is much better. I always like service fee because we don't work for free. Anyway, managing the closing. If you have a good title company, that makes it a lot easier. Post-closing, I've got some really good tips for buyers agents. I've got a couple of good anecdotes I'll give you on that. We're always in the business of providing reassurance, especially now with buyers are kind of in a whole new world too. It used to be easy for them. It used to be easy for the agents. Now we just have to have those conversations that I hardly ever had when I showed buyers property. And then we'll talk a little bit about my company. Okay, education. All right, guys, moving right along. This includes, like I said, includes your education as well. Master the buyer-broker agreement. In fact, I know Mallory has been spending a lot of time on this. We've had conversations on this. We're going to have a joint training in about a month. I'm not sure exactly of the date where we'll together go over that thing with a fine-tooth comb. Yeah. By the way, you guys are newer. You guys are obviously newer, but the FAR contract has a much better buyer-broker agreement than the NEFAR contract did. So I'm glad that went away. It's easier to read, easier to maintain. Anyway, any buyer coming into the marketplace needs education regarding the market conditions. And we're in a market now. Technically, we're not in a buyer's market because you have to have 6 months of inventory before you're really officially considered a buyer's market. As far as I'm concerned, we're in a buyer's market now. We're about 5.5 months of inventory. I talk to agents every day. I was out I saw a bunch of open houses last week, and they're all singing the blues that inventory is not moving. And that's just the market we're in right now. Neighborhood subdivision status, offer and contract rules of engagement. To me, that's where we really earn our service fee. We really guide buyers how to do it. If people have never bought a house, I think it's an easy process. Here's what I say about real estate. There's no black and white. It's all gray. Yeah. How long have you been an agent?
About 2 years.
Okay, so good. Sharing your local contractor list strengthens this, and I'll have a really good anecdote on this with one of the biggest billing agents I know in the market. Research, explain that buying and selling a home is not something they do often. Now you have to definitely have a buyer consultation. Say, hey, you want to look for a house? We need to sit down and tell you what to expect. And that's when you unveil the buyer-broker agreement. they're going to have misinformation about it. You have to convince them that, hey, it's the best way to go. That way we have an agreement, an employment agreement. I refer to it later. So a lot of documents, even if buyers have sold a home before, you can parallel their signing a listing agreement to sell is comparable to buyers signing a representation agreement. They are signing an employment agreement that allows you to work with them to purchase a home. And you know what? One of my biggest frustrations with real estate when I was an agent and even when I was running real estate offices, you get buyers, you show them property, you don't have a written agreement, all of a sudden they go dark on you. Then you get a hold of them in 2 weeks and say, oh, I'm sorry, we bought another house. Ever happened to you? No? Good for you.
We did, yeah. I mean, I showed them a couple of houses and they never responded me back.
Yeah, so this will help that. Lays out what your obligations and responsibilities are to them. It also shows them what they need to do as part of the process. Hey, we need to be loyal to each other. I mean, we need to work together. And I think ultimately it'd be good. Setting a strategy. Every buyer needs a strategy. It's all going to be different. I always say, tell them you're their call. I'll coach you through this. They need to be continually adjusted and refined for each property, especially when you get into the contract submission. Offer preparation is critical. Kind of mentioned that. It's a detail-oriented work. If you're detail-oriented, you'll be successful in this business. If you're not, you're going to have difficulty with it because so much of it is detail-oriented. Your professionalism is needed throughout. I refer to myself as a real estate professional, and you guys ever wear your name badge into a supermarket, and people come up to you and say, "Well, you guys." Yeah, you're in the real estate, right? You're a real estate agent. My response is usually, yes, I'm a real estate professional. Because we are. Part of the reason that whole lawsuit came about is the people that sued knew nothing about our business, and that's a whole nother story. Emphasize your fiduciary duty to them. I'm here to help you make the best deal you can make. And maybe get the best loan you can get. You want to maintain common professionalism. Especially when contingencies come up, people's hair gets on fire, and they just go crazy. Your job is to calm the waters on it. And I guarantee once you have a contract, you're going to see that you're going to need to calm the waters a couple of times. All right, crafting the offer. This is one of the most important aspects. By the way, whether you're on the Zoom or people in here, I've got handouts I'll give you. And if you're not here, we'll send you the handout. I got a handout of this presentation. You're more than welcome to take notes, but you don't have to. How's that? Go over all items that need to be completed as part of the offer process. Very detail-oriented work, and they'll appreciate that they have you. Failure to omit or include or omit something could have serious consequences. Like, for example, refrigerator in the garage. The buyers want this. Let's put it in the listing. Let's put it in the purchase and sale agreement. Even if it's part of the seller disclosure that it will be included, don't count on that. And certainly if it's an MLS that says refrigerator and garage conveys with property, don't count on that. Just be overly cautious on that stuff. All timelines must not overlap the closing date. These should not create an impossible situation with meeting a deadline. We had a situation with this at my company, America's Choice Title, and other title companies that probably had this same problem, and we get a contract in. It was going to close in 15 days. It was under a loan, and we know it was going to close in 15 days or maybe 20 days, but the loan contingency period is 25 days. So we called up. The contract was submitted. We called up the buyer's agent and said, "You're out. You can't do this unless they say, oh no, that's fine because we're going to get the loan within a week." So. Anyway, make sure that the timelines make sense, and it's not
before closing.
Well, yeah, but typically you just hit it. Typically, the mortgage approval period is 25 days. Anyway, just good title companies like ours will catch those things and help you. It was an easy thing. The buyer assured us that, and the listing agent said, yes, we're pretty sure they'll have the loan within a week.
The loan approval, is that like When is that clear to close?
Well, the different, the clear to close is once the loan is approved, then after that, the clear to close is issued. And again, that's after the appraisal process and all that sort of thing. The clear to close is the last document you're gonna get from the loan company that lets you close.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying, so the 25 days, do we need to have like clear to close within the 25 days of loan approval, or that is later?
Yes.
Additional.
But typically, we don't order the survey until the loan has been approved, because the way it is now is the buyer has to pay for the survey, and the survey can usually get done in a couple of days. So anyway, I'm getting a little ahead of myself, but yes, obviously you've done all that. The agent must hover over every item, every term, and discuss implications with the buyers, even if they bought properties. I'll tell you a great kind of an aside story. I was at a house about a month ago, open house, a buyer's broker open house, and I know the agent. She's done hundreds of deals, thousands of deals, and she was listing the house, and her customer obviously wanted to sell it for more than it was probably worth, which happens. Whole different conversation. And he said to her, he said, look, I've sold 6 houses in my life. How did he say it? This isn't my first rodeo. And she says to him, we're going to be fine. I've sold 6,000 houses. So I think between the two of us, we got this covered. And people think if they sold a couple houses, they know the deal, but it changes and it's complicated. All right, contingency items. Contingency items almost always come up. Again, inspection. The two biggest contingency items that screw up deals, maybe I'm getting out of sequence here, is the mortgage. If you don't get a mortgage, you're not going to close, and the inspection process, because that's when a lot of deals fall apart. I do a training on that, by the way, a whole separate, it's about a 20-minute training. Okay, prepare your buyers if, when they do. Timelines are critical. I say to agents, once you have a contract, check your timelines at least every other day. Every day is really probably better. And here's another thing. And when I was trained agents, when I was running offices and when I was an agent, once you have a contract, there's 4 people you need to call immediately. First person is your customer. In this case, a buyer customer. Hey, congratulations, we have a contract. I'll be sending you an email within a few minutes with items you need to do by certain dates to get this thing to the closing table. The second person you should call is your cross agent. I'll tell you why. Something's going to come up during the deal, and you don't want your first conversation to be a problem. So you call your cross agent and say, hey, congratulations, we have a contract. Let's work together to get it to the closing table. That could help alleviate problems later. And then if you're a buyer's agent, it's okay to call the title company, whether you know them or not. Just introduce yourself. Hey, I'm the buyer's agent. Here's my information. Can I get you a copy of the contract? They already have it, so just do that. And then obviously call your lender and let them know that you've got the contract. And I always tell listing agents, get to know the lender. Because if you're getting to that 25-day window and you're not hearing from and you've called the buyer's agent and you haven't heard back, there's probably a problem. So communication is a key. All right. Financing, appraisal, inspection contingencies, and other specific requests are critical. The title search, what it shows. Buyer's agent, once you have a contract submitted to the title company, let's say you're just curious, it's never going to hurt you. Or when you call the title company to introduce yourself, just say, hey, have you seen are there any liens or anything in the title that could delay things? Title company is your best contact for that, because they're going to know, because they do a title search immediately with our underwriter. We use Chicago Title, which I'm sure you may have never heard of. But there's a bunch of underwriting companies out there. We use them. We think they're the best. My boss says they deliver the most durable title, which means the most solid title. The final commitment letter from lender, again, until you have that, the thing isn't going to close. And negotiation skills can help overcome the contingencies. Okay, let's say the buyer has asked for certain things, and the seller comes back and says, oh, we can give you this, we can give you that, we can't do this. You've got to have a calm head. Don't let the deal fall apart because of one item. All right. Another thing, when I'm a listing agent, I suggest, in fact, most contracts now, when buyers submit a contract to a listing agent, they ask for a home warranty, correct? I would always encourage my seller to include it. And because it helps solve some of these problems. Let's say the buyer says they want a new AC and the seller says, no, it's only 8 years old. Hey, if you got a home warranty and it craps out on you, you get it replaced for like whatever the fee is, 100, 150. Final commitment letter from lender and negotiation skills can help. Be a problem solver and show that you are a problem solver, because although I don't consider contingencies problems, they are mini problems, or in some cases, big problems. All right. Managing the contract to close period. This is what I say when we really earn our service fee as agents. So once all terms and conditions have been met, the transaction, take charge to make sure everyone is doing their job. Don't presume that the listing agent is going to be doing the right things. Just check in, hey, be friendly, calm. Create a transaction closing checklist to show what needs to be done. Have you done that? Hopefully, Orjust probably gave you a good sample. And what I would do when I had a buyer, I'd say, okay, in the next few minutes, I'll send you a timeline of what you need to do. And the way I did it, it was a very simple thing. It was like, day the contract was signed is day 0. Day 1, ask, secure an inspection. Talk to your lender. Make sure you get your papers in. Never assume all is okay and everyone is doing what they're supposed to be doing. Just be cautious. Inspections and repairs are significant milestones. And many deals fall through during the repair period. It's amazing. People just get their hair on fire and say, I need to have this. And like I said, this is where the rubber meets the road. In fact, I had a situation once where I was running a Coldwell Banker office and my agent calls me. We had a closing, it was moving toward closing, and she said, I got a call from the buyer's agent today, and that house had a fireplace, and it had been inspected by a home inspector. Everything was fine. The buyer calls her and says, the buyer's agent calls her and say the buyer now wants the inspection by a licensed furnace or licensed fireplace inspector. Otherwise, they're not going to close. So she called me and she said, okay, I've checked, and there's only a couple that actually are fireplace certified, maybe more than a couple. She said it's going to cost $100 and the seller's not going to pay for it. And I said, okay, here's what I suggest you do. Call the seller, tell him you'll pay for it. You don't want to lose a deal for $100. So if the seller's a good guy, he won't let you do that and he'll pay for it. So little things like that. And the closer you get to closing date, the more little things become big things to people's minds. So keep a cool head, and that will help you a lot. So managing the closing. Final walkthrough. Here's the best tip I can give an agent. For the final walkthrough, try to do the day before closing. Not always possible, but closing day, emotions are high on both sides, sellers and buyers, especially buyers. Here's another tip, since you've worked with buyers before. Try not to schedule closings on Mondays or Fridays. Easier said than done. We had a situation at my office. I mentioned it to you. The sellers closed on a Friday. We went to their house to sign the closing documents because they were moving out of the house on Friday. They signed. The buyers were going to sign Friday, but the bank needed more time to get everything done. So it said, we're going to fund it on Monday. So the buyers came. So my boss gets a call from the listing agent on Saturday or Sunday. He says, hey, the buyers are in the house already. Did you give them the keys? She said, no, the keys are here. They're in my office. So the buyer had let me in, which is a no-no. We talked to the buyer about it and said, hey, you're not supposed to do that. And I understand how buyers want to get into the houses, but it wasn't closed. Not our fault, not the listing agent's fault. Try not to keep things. I'll tell you another story about a closing. We had a situation about 6 months ago. The seller signed on a Friday. It was closing on a Monday. The final walkthrough was a Monday. There was a lot of rain that weekend. They come in for the final walkthrough and there was noticed a leak. There was a new leak above the door inside. 2 good agents, they worked it out. The seller gave them like $800 to fix the leak. Everything was fine. And again, they do the final walkthrough on Friday. They don't see that, but emotions run high as you get close. On closing day, buyer's agent needs to ensure all keys and access cards are available to buyers, not before closing day. Right. And any information about things in the property needs to be provided to buyer, like the garage door, keypad thing, all those things, yes. Make sure listing agent has removed lockbox and signs. They usually are pretty good at that. When I was a listing agent, I was superstitious, and I would not remove the lockbox or the sign until after it had closed. Again, sometime that day I would go over and do it. Leave nothing to chance, the moniker I came up with when I got into the business. Post-closing, here's some good tips for agents. Don't bring a closing gift to your buyer at closing. Okay, the one I just mentioned, where the buyers got into the house the day before they should have, or 2 days before they should have. The buyer's agent comes in, she's dressed, she looks great, she brought some buyer gift for him. Okay, she thought the thing was gonna sign and close and they'd be gone. They signed, she gave him the gift, it didn't fund for another 3 or 4 hours. So the gift had really no meaning. So what I say is, tell them you have something for them you'd like to bring over in a week or two. That gives you the whole key to this business is customer contact. And so you see them in a week or in 2 weeks, you go over, how's the house? Is everything okay? You need that contact because they'll probably end up being a listing contract for you if you manage it right. It gives you another chance to get in front of them. Plus, closing day, they're thinking about getting in the house. They're not even going to think about the gift you get them. But a week later, they're in the house, and maybe something came up, and maybe they say, "Hey, you know a good carpenter? We wanted to get something done." You'd be their go-to for vendors. I mentioned an agent who's probably the highest volume agent I've ever known. Her name is Kim Martin Fisher. You may or may not have heard of her. She does most of her business at the beach. Last year was a bad year for her. She still did about 52 million in closed business. Her secret is she does more listings obviously, but her customers, if it's a buyer, she says, "Hey, if you got any questions on vendors, call me." And she makes that a priority. She says she gets at least 1 or 2 calls a week from past customers that are in their house. They want to know about a vendor. She says, "I want them to come to me." And that is a great secret. So when a customer calls you after they've been in the house for 6 months, don't consider it a pain in the butt. And maybe you can't drop everything, but say, "I'll get you some information before the end of the day. I'll text you a number of a good person." Be sure to send them the homestead exemption information at the appropriate time. What I did is I would send them something about 2 months after closing, just say, "Hey, don't forget to do this." And then in December, I'd remind them. Keep in consistent contact with them because they turn into a listing prospect at some time. You always want to provide reassurance. You're the expert. Assure buyers you are there for them if any issue comes up. You will contact them immediately if a situation pops up. Again, the caveat on that is something comes up. Maybe the seller says, "I'm not going to pay for this one inspection." Calm yourself down before you call them and come up with some sort of maybe a solution. Maybe we can't get this. Maybe we can ask for something else. Okay. Remind them you're always available. Like again, the thing I didn't like about being an agent, the thing I liked about being an agent was you got some time to yourself where you can do things, but it's a 24/7 job. And my boss getting called on a Saturday or Sunday last weekend saying, "Hey, the buyers got into the house and I didn't give them the keys." Show them you're a problem solver. They'll appreciate it and it'll bring them back. Tell them you want this to be a mutually beneficial and productive experience. Show them you work for them rather than against them. Your representation agreement assures that agents working with buyers have a right to expect compensation. That's the new buzzword. What do I call it?
Compensation.
I call it service fees.
Service fee.
Yeah. And the buyer's right to expect certain things from the agent. I mean, this thing will ultimately be good for us. All the buyer's bill of rights basically were understood because if you work with me, listing agent of a listing brokerage pays my brokerage, and then I get part of that fee and goes from there. Here are just some final thoughts. The above suggestions will continue to evolve. You guys know that the DOJ has now come in and said, "Hey, these agreements aren't the end all." Now they're reconsidering that. It's just so crazy. By the way, when these lawsuits first came up about 9-10 years ago, all of us in the business said, "We'll never go anywhere." But it did. New ways of doing business may follow, and there'll be a learning curve, which you're on now. Buyers will wonder why every agent discusses the importance of buyer representation. This never happened before, so that's why you want to have your pitch down when you're talking to them. what I call is an elevator pitch, when you're meeting someone and just, hey, we need to come into the office, let's talk, I'll show you what I can do for you, I'll show you what I expect. There's a small chance you may have to pay me, but chances are you won't. But I just want to go over that so it's all clear. They need to be re-educated on the buying process. And they bought a house 2 years ago, things are different now. They can negotiate a little bit now. 2 years ago, they couldn't. Even though they understand an agent doesn't work for free, they may be hesitant about the potential financial obligation. Only one time when I was an agent did I was working with a buyer and I made him sign, or I asked him to sign a buyer broker agreement. And it was a guy I didn't trust. He's a member of my club. I've played golf with him. I still don't trust him. And he said, why do you want me to sign this? And I said, well, you don't work for free, do you? And he goes, well, no. And I said, well, don't expect me to work for free. So I ended up, the best advice I gave him was, it was a house he really wanted. I kind of talked him out of it. The person that bought it found out there's a lot of problems with the house. So he still thanks me for talking him out of it. We made an offer and I said, don't go higher. Anyway, we don't work for free. We shouldn't be expected to. Having an upfront discussion with the buyer will at least let you know if you have a committed buying customer. Because I showed houses to a lot of people back in the day and they just disappeared. Or, I showed you 20 houses, what's happening? Oh, we found one, we called the listing agent, we did it. We bought it. So this should eliminate most of that, or a lot of that. Here's a little bit my company. I will start off by saying, when I was a listing agent, if you're going to stay in the business long term, listing agent is the way to go. Especially nowadays, I closed all my listing contracts with America's Choice. I found them to be the best for me. We've earned a stellar reputation. We close transactions in an expeditious and timely manner. We become your partner. We offer reminders of timelines. There was times when I was busy with stuff and one of the closers at America's Choice would call me and say, hey, well, how's this coming? Oh, thank you. I can't believe I forgot that. Thank you. I'll get back to you later today. We offer your sellers a Butler rebate. Nobody's ever heard of that. There was a builder down in Florida, down in South Florida. He died many years ago. His name was Clark Butler. And he sued the Florida, he went to the Florida Supreme Court to sue the Department of Insurance that said you don't allow title insurance agencies to give a rebate to the person paying for the title policy. One of the biggest fees for the seller is the seller's policy on the title insurance. So he won the case, and title companies are allowed to offer a rebate. Now, for a $400,000 home, it's going to be $100. That's still $100. It doesn't come out of your pocket; it comes out of ours. A guy named Dan Quiggle started this company. You might Google him; real interesting guy. And Christine Maselli. And when they set up the company back in 2002, this suit had just been settled about a year earlier, and they said, let's offer this as our course of business. So we do. And we'll close your transaction any time and location you choose. I told you one last Friday where the seller signed at their house. Extremely efficient staff. Eagles World Realty. I know Mallory talks to the agents about giving us a try. The funny thing about my company is once agents try us, they keep using us. So that kind of speaks for itself. We're easy to reach and return calls. We'll close transactions any location. What I like to say is we deliver a great closing experience. And I keep getting comments about that from agents. I talk to agents every day. In fact, I've got another training up the block, not even a mile up the block, half mile up the block at a brokerage this afternoon. And once they try us, they keep using us. We were awarded Best Title Company last year for the Ponte Vedra Recorder, which is a newspaper that's still highly read out there. When I was an agent, I would show properties, I would list properties there. And I'll tell you a funny story about this. I know the publisher very well. Susan, her name is. She called me last May. Right around, in fact, she called me just last week. She said, we're doing a best of the beaches, or best of Ponte Vedra. You want to run an ad to promote yourself? And I said, I'm not going to do that. I said, is this a money grab, Susan, for you to make some money on people trying to? She said, well, sort of. And that's their business, to make money. Profits are not a bad thing. Or just has a book in there that says profits, something about the profit thing. And profits are a good thing because it allows you to hire people and keep them employed. It allows you to set up maybe a foundation for needy people and that sort of thing. So I didn't do anything. So I forgot about it. So about 4 months goes by and she called me and said, but guess what? You guys won. And I said, great. And she said, yeah, the title company that came in second paid a lot of money on ads and did a lot on Facebook. We did nothing, and we still won. And so now she called me last week and said, I suppose you don't want to advertise. I said, no, let's see what happens if we win it 2 years in a row. So I'm very happy about that. So in fact, my business card, which is in the handout I gave you, has this logo on the back, voted best title company. So that's it. This is my information, and I'll send an email to you guys tomorrow with the presentation.